Welcome to Ill-Equipped History's 100th episode!
100! Woo-woo! Oh my god! We made it, guys.
We did it! We're at 100 episodes!
Oh god, 100. What? In my brain, we're at 25. Like a solid,
I know.
We
just
little
started
baby
it like
podcasters.
a few months ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a new little thing.
Yeah.
2 years is coming up.
That's so crazy.
How did we get here?
With perseverance.
Yeah.
That's how we got here. Oh, boy.
Well, dang. Just thinking about where we started. Me in the closet. I'm out now, don't worry.
With our crappy microphones and...
Oh my god, yes. Blankets hanging up everywhere.
Learning how to edit still. We could probably still improve, but where we started...
Hey, we're doing way better. It does not take me near as long to edit.
Mm-mm.
In fact, I edit while I clean. I hope that doesn't reflect in the pod.
She's a multitasker, y'all.
I can't just sit. What do you want me to do? Just sit? I could be folding laundry.
Yeah, there's so many other things you could be doing.
Yeah.
Well, we could not be here without you all, our wonderful listeners that continue to check us out every single week. Thank you so much. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you.
We've had like a really big spike in listenership here recently.
We have.
So thank you to everyone that has liked and subscribed and sent it to people and just commented and engaged with us in any form. Like, you could literally just wave at us and we'll be smitten. So we also did get a few new people on our Facebook, and we're seeing a little uptick in the engagement there. So keep going, keep commenting.
Yes.
That's
Thank
what
you so
those posts are
much.
for. We want to hear what you think.
We want y'all to come up with like theories and like debate things back and forth. Like we would love for you guys to be our little community on Facebook. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, because we love you and we want to talk to you, because nerding out about history is great with the two of us, but it's even better with you guys.
Yes. And we love you.
Crazy.
And thanks again. And our 100th episode special surprise will either have already come out or will be coming out very soon, depending on when that's coming out.
That's more editing.
But we do have a 100th episode special surprise that we did as of recording, like this past weekend, that post that y'all saw. Or no, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Yeah, that's... What year is it? I don't know.
What day is it?
Time is an illusion. It was a bit ago.
As of recording, not that long ago, but when this will air, like 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So yeah, we hope you like our special surprise. We liked our special surprise. It was a lot of fun.
I'm still recovering from our special surprise. So.
I think that's what got me sick. I was being around people because apparently I have the immune system of someone who like grew up in a cave.
Yeah.
I have the immune system of an axolotl.
Yeah, it's not good. Well, if it makes you feel better, I've already gotten into poison. It's March. I was outside for, I don't know. I watched my children dig up some rocks, and I helped them move the rocks. Oh, I asked them to, because I wanted some landscaping rocks, but I didn't want to pay for them, so I had them dig them up
Child
from
labor,
somewhere else.
Fine.
They thought it was great. They got to use a wheelbarrow. But I think that's where I got it, because the next day I'm like, why am I itchy? Oh no!
'Tis the season. Emily.
It's in 2 spots already. It's fine. Everything's fine. Whatever.
Well, if you guys can't hear it, I am sick yet again. If you can hear it in my voice, I think it's a sinus infection. My doctor thinks it's something viral, so we're going to wait and see. And if it doesn't start clearing up over the next few days, then she's going to give me some antibiotics. but I'm extremely congested. I don't really have a cough, thankfully. It's just all in my sinuses. I feel like my face is a brick full of concrete.
I feel it in my neck, like in the back of my neck. I don't know what's back there but that happens to me. It feels like concrete back there.
Yeah. She did feel my lymph nodes, and like when she touched them, I was like, ooh. She's like, yeah, they're a little swollen. Is that tender? And I was like, yeah. So I'm definitely fighting off something.
Yeah, please stop poking them. Do you want to talk about some more shit, Morgan?
Let's talk about some more stuff. So it took me a little while to come up with the topic of today's episode. And actually, I started researching a completely different topic. And then I remembered, oh, wait, this is going to be the 100th episode. I should probably cover something about 100 something. But I didn't want to just do a list of 100 things because that just would not really be interesting.
No. And you wouldn't be able to put any time to them.
No. I would just, like, even just talking, if I spoke about, like, a minute on each topic, that would still be, like, almost an hour and a half right there, so.
Yeah, that's too much.
So, and that's not interesting, that's not fun. So we have a two-parter today. And next week, because when you talk about 100 of something, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
So, let's jump into today's skit, and I'll talk more about our topic for today.
Yes.
My prince, I've just received word that your grandfather is dead.
Oh, how sad. Oh well, neat. He had no male heirs, so I'm the King of France. Cool. I'm going to write to his council so we can arrange a coronation date.
A few months pass, and a letter returns to the prince.
Ooh, my coronation date letter. How exciting. Your Royal Highness Edward III, thank you for your letter, and we regret Charles's passing. We regret to inform you that you will not be coronated as King of France. We have decided to crown Charles's cousin, Philip, as king. What? But I'm in line for the throne. How can I just be passed over like that? We have cited the ancient Salic law that states women cannot inherit property, and as your mother Isabella is the regent of England, by proxy, you cannot inherit our lands. That doesn't make any sense. She's not inheriting the land. I am. I'm not a woman, and I am not my mother. This is an outrage. Once I turn of age, I will get what I want.
Ooh. Bum, bum, bum.
He mad.
He definitely worked to get what he wanted, and it caused over 100 years of war.
Oh, he started it?
Basically, yes.
Okay.
We are talking about the 100 Years' War between England and France. And kind of Spain, a little bit.
Kind of
just
Spain.
For a second. But primarily between England and France.
Well, this is exciting. I don't really know. I've heard it be said. I feel like it's one of those topics that, again, you're at school and they go, and then there was 100 years of war. And then we go on to the next topic. Like, I don't really know anything about this.
I didn't either. And there's actually a few things that I read. I was like, oh, I know of this happening, but I didn't know it was a part of this. Or, oh, I know who this person is. I didn't know they were a part of this. There's a very special someone we'll talk about in part 2, who I'm keeping a surprise for everyone. Because I did not know this person was involved, and I got really excited when I saw their name. So, 100 Years' War, it actually lasted... Basically, it lasted 116 years, but it officially lasted, like 140 years.
Jesus.
But there wasn't any active fighting, like, those last 20 to 30 years.
Right. Okay.
It was just, like, when the last treaty was signed, officially ending the war. But the last battle is what most sources cite as the end of the 100 Years' War. Just so you all know. We're talking olden times in Europe. So there's about 6 names that we'll be talking. There's about 50 different people, and they all have the same 6 names.
Roughly the same name. Different numbers at the end?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all have different numbers. So on the English side, we'll have a lot of Henrys and Edwards.
Okay.
And I think a Richard or two, and Johns. And then on the French side, we'll have some Charleses, some Philips, some Jeans, lots of Charleses, and they're not all like in the royal family. So I'll do my best to explain. Like, I didn't even come up with a like when I did the Jacobite episode, I came up with like a family tree. There was no point in this. Like, there's no way. There's too many people, and there's a lot of people I'm going to just not mention at all. There are several aspects to the 100 Years' War I'm not going to mention because there's just so much that happened. Like, there's a few civil wars. I'm just not... Like, there was the Breton Civil War that happened off and on for a long time. I'm not even going to touch upon it. But if you're interested, in the show notes, I watched a 3.5 hour animated documentary about the 100 Years' War.
Oh my
on
God.
YouTube.
That's so long.
It was so long. It took me days to watch this, but it's really interesting. It's called 100 Years' War Full Story Every Battle Animated Medieval History by the Kings and Generals channel on YouTube, which is linked in our show notes. A lot more information, gets into a lot more of the people who are involved. It goes into a lot of detail about each battle, explains everything very well about like how each battle happened. Very interesting if you're into that sort of thing. So I highly recommend that video.
Could you imagine how long it would take to animate all that?
It's thankfully not very complicated. Like, most of the animations are like, he uses flags to like represent like the different regiments and stuff. And there are a few like cut scenes where it has like people marching, but it's more of like mass generated like models.
Got
like,
it.
marching.
Okay, I was about to say, oh my God.
No, it's not fully detailed, but he does a really good job of like when he's talking about the different areas and people, he has like little icons for each person and like moving them around appropriately, and the interactions between different leaders and when people die. It's very well done. It helped me understand a lot of what happened.
Okay.
And I relied very heavily on this video because when I looked at other sources, it just mentioned everything this video already said. And I do kind of follow the overall narrative that this YouTube video follows. So because I don't want to plagiarize this video, like, primary source, most of my information is from this YouTube video. I just don't cover everything.
Yeah. But
this video is really, really great if you need more information or want more information about everything that happened, because oh my gosh, so much stuff happens. I think that's about all I need, like, to forewarn you all getting into the 100 Years' War. And I'm going to do my best to make this an interesting narrative, but because it there's a lot of battles, a lot of politics involved, a lot of dates. I don't want it to just be like a listicle, but it might end up being a little bit like that. I'm going to try my best for it to not be. Before we talk about the 100 Years' War, we need to go back. We're going to come in 1066. When William, Duke of Normandy, conquered England.
Okay.
So Normandy, I don't know if it was at the time, but definitely in like the 1400s, it was a part of France. So when William conquered Normandy, this created English and French ties.
Okay.
So like the English monarchs now had like French ancestry. They actually primarily spoke French, and they were basically like, yes, we're French, we're just ruling England, was kind of the mindset going on. In the 1100s, the English king actually had more land in France than the king of France did.
No way. Wow.
But that started ending in the 1200s when France started regaining more of its territory back from the English under Henry III, who was the king of England at the time. He tried to regain these lands back in 1230 and 1242, but he was not very successful. And in 1259, Henry III ended up signing the Treaty of Paris, which forced him to sign over his claims in France except for Gascony or Aquitaine. They seem interchangeable. Okay. So if I say Aquitaine or if I say Gascony, it's the same area in France.
What's it called now?
France.
Oh. Okay.
It's like it's like a territory, and it's on the eastern coast of France, along the English Channel, closer to Spain. The treaty it gave up all of the England's claims in France except for Gascony or Aquitaine. But the king did not have, like, sovereignty over Aquitaine. He still had to pay homage to the King of France for owning this land in France.
Okay.
And over time, as the century passed, his power in Gascony started diminishing because he's not there, you know? Like, he's in England, and so, like, his power over Gascony and Aquitaine started diminishing over time. And then just in general, there continued to be skirmishes and territorial disputes and claims between England and France for the next 50 or so years. Because, again, like, the English was like, this is our land, and France was like, no, this is our land. So they just kept going back and forth.
Right.
So on January 31st, 1328, Charles IV of France died with no male heirs.
Okay.
And you would think that the line of succession would go to his grandson, Edward III. He wasn't Edward III at the time, but we're just saying that for simplicity's sake.
So this is our skit.
This is our skit.
Okay.
But his cousin, Philip VI, was picked over Edward to take the French throne, which didn't really make any sense due to the laws of succession at the time, because it usually goes down to, like, closest male heir down your line. But Philip was named heir because there was an ancient Salic law which forbid women from inheriting land, and the council in France, they really just didn't want someone from England to take the throne. They wanted to keep it in France.
Okay.
Was their main reasoning for this, but they couldn't just say, we don't want the future king of England to have the French throne.
They're finding a loophole.
Massive loophole. I don't know why I said it like that. Major
massive.
I was trying to say major and massive at the same time. Massive. Massive loophole with the Salic law, because Edward was related to Charles through his mother Isabella, who ruled England with her lover.
Okay.
So I don't even know if she was officially queen. I think she was just regent because he was not of age yet to take the throne.
Okay.
And so when Edward became of age, he deposed his mother, killed her lover, and exiled her to Norfolk.
Say that again. I'm sorry. What?
When Edward was of age, he deposed his mother, killed her lover, and exiled her to Norfolk.
I feel like that was unnecessary.
He was like, I'm going to be king now. Bye-bye, mother. It's all your fault that I'm not king of France.
I feel like she would have given it to him.
Possibly. I think she also was, like, sneaky and conniving as well.
Oh.
So I think that it may have... I don't know if she was quite ready to give up her power when he became of age. So he was like, I'm taking it by force.
You know, he didn't kill her.
He did not. He killed her boyfriend.
That's rude.
But he didn't kill her. He just exiled her.
This is sloppy. This is like ancient Jerry Springer. Like...
Yeah. It's messy. And it just continues to get... This whole story is so messy.
It's like pouring the tea. Like, get the hot gossip.
Very much so. This whole story is people saying, no, that's my land. Back and forth for over a century.
He said, she said. Just a bunch of he said, she said.
So he took the throne in 1333. He invaded French territories in Scotland, because Scotland and France were allies because they hated the English. So this wasn't cool to the French.
Right.
And in 1336, Edward took in Robert d'Artois, who was a French nobleman who had poisoned his aunt in a land dispute and had been exiled out of France. We haven't even gotten into the war yet. This is the lead up to the war, and it's already this messy.
Oh, I'm so glad I live in this ripe year of 2025. I would have never survived.
So Robert d'Artois was not even a war criminal, just like a criminal, because he killed his aunt.
Moida.
And so Edward was like, come here. I see you as a potential ally. Literally.
You crazy. Let's be friends.
Edward gave Robert castles, money, and an earldom. Awesome. Which pissed off Philip, who, again, is the King of France. And he said anyone who took in this man was an enemy. So now he's, like, declaring England to be France's enemy. So wow. Philip sent his seneschal to get Robert out of Edward's lands, but Edward refused and no agreement could be made. So now they're like, okay, it's wartime. They literally are starting to prep for war.
Because the dude is housing a murderer?
Yeah.
Shouldn't France just be happy that he's not there anymore?
I think it's, like, because he was a nobleman, so I think he was, like, in the court of the king. And okay. So that's why it was, like, more personal. It wasn't just some guy. It was
right, and he probably knows shit that now he's in bed with England. Mm-hmm. And you could turn that around.
Yeah.
On
and now
France.
Robert will do whatever because Edward gave him a freaking earldom and castles. So he's like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want.
What do you want me to do, buddy?
Yeah. And he did.
Okay. All right. I'm seeing how this is important. Okay.
Yeah. So in 1337, Edward declared his right to rule both England and France. So, like, I am king of both, and I should be king of both. And then Philip went, I guess England had, like, some kind of hold on the Duchy of Guienne.
Okay.
Which isn't super important, but Philip reclaimed it, and then England invaded, and the war started. And then Philip said, oh, you know this little territory, Aquitaine, that you have? It's no longer yours. It's no longer English. It's French now. And England was like, hell no. We've had this place for centuries. You can't just take it away from us like that.
Why? We're at the beginning. I know. Why do kings act like spoiled toddlers with
it's so crazy.
People's lives?
Also, I don't even go into this, but there's a ton of other things also going on at the same time. I'm just sticking to the war, but there's like, again, there's civil wars, like different civil wars brewing in France at the time. There's other like political machinations going on. Watch the video I referenced to get more info on this.
There's always political machinations.
There is, especially in this case. People be scheming.
Yeah.
So the 100 Years' War is generally broken up into 3 phases. The Edwardian phase, the Carolingian phase, and the Lancastrian phase. I think today we're going to talk about the first 2. We'll talk about the last one in next week's episode. So this is the beginning of the Edwardian phase. So France started attacking Gascony, Aquitaine, to claim it back. And then Edward went to Flanders, which is north of France, in Belgium, modern day Belgium.
Okay.
I guess like France like had Flanders at the time, but so he went to Flanders and bought the allegiance of the Holy Roman Emperor, but this literally didn't do anything. Like, had no power, had no, like, he just wasted a ton of money, literally so much money to buy the loyalty of the Holy Roman Emperor, who never comes back in the story at all.
Oh my God. So they're like, yeah, we support you. Big thumbs up from over here.
We literally never going to speak again.
Go get them, buddy. Thanks for the money.
Yeah. So then Edward invaded France officially. And in 1339 was the first battle of the 100 Years' War, the conflict between England and France officially. As Edward is, because Edward's on the front lines. He's not just saying all this from England. Like, he's literally in France, like, in his army. Doing shit. And this is another common theme. The English army was just demolishing villages and towns, stripping local resources, and doing this to hurt the French economy, French resources.
Okay.
This is going to come up again and again, just so you all know.
So shitty. Okay.
By 1340, Edward was flat broke.
Yeah.
He spent all of his money buying the allegiance of the Holy Roman Emperor. He literally had to sell his royal crown to get enough money for the Holy Roman Emperor and his army.
Honey, if you don't have it, don't buy it.
But he was still like, I'm still the king of France and England. And then England got retribution because France started going up and attacking English coastal towns. And so
right,
there was this real fear that France would start invading England. And so Edward returned to England. And also, like, he owed a lot of people a lot of money. So he went back to England to, like, try to resolve all of that. So now we're getting into our first, like, really big battles. The first one is the Battle of Sliss. And
okay.
Battle of St. Omer in 1340. They both happened in the same year. So Edward said he was going to attack the French naval armada in Sliss. It's spelled Luslluys, but Sliss. I wrote down all the French pronunciations. Also, as we've mentioned, I'm not French. I'm going to do my best with French pronunciations, but I'm sorry if I get them wrong. Which is in modern-day Belgium, Flanders area. And his council was like, no, don't do that. You don't have any money. Don't launch a naval don't attack the French naval armada. So the French naval armada had 212 ships and vessels with almost 20,000 men.
Okay.
And the English Navy was much smaller with only about 120 to 160 ships with 16,000 men.
Okay.
But the difference was the French Navy, they didn't have as much of a percentage of, like, experienced fighters.
Okay.
A lot of them were, like, farmers, or, like, they were, like, men-at-arms, but they weren't battle-worn.
Right.
But the English Navy had a lot, most, if not all, of the sailors in the English Navy had experience, and the English Navy had longbowmen, and longbows were way faster and had a lot more range and were more accurate than French crossbows.
Yeah,
which will be another recurring theme in the next 2 episodes. So in the Battle of Sliss, the English is going up against the French Navy.
Right. So
they start fighting. But then the Flanders Navy, like, flanks the French Navy, because Flanders was sided with England. And so now they're getting flanked. By that evening, the French lost 190 ships and between 16,000 to 18,000 men.
Holy shit.
There was 19,650 men, and they lost up to 18,000 men in this naval battle.
That's a slaughter.
Yeah. Apparently, this is not funny, but also it's kind of funny. But it's very sad, but also funny. Apparently, the only person who could give Philip the news about what happened was his jester. I know, it's not funny, but I can't help but laugh at that.
You know, we did cover in the circus bonus episode that jesters actually were higher up in the court than you think.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah, major, devastating loss. And a lot of it is attributed to the English longbowmen because they have so much more range. They didn't even have to really get close to just annihilate all on board.
Did it say how much on the English side lost?
No, I didn't write down. They lost quite a bit as well themselves.
Right.
But they won the battle. It wasn't near the percentage of men. I think they lost like maybe 1,000 or 2,000. So still like a lot of loss of life, but not as much.
Question, what year was this?
1340.
Okay, so there were 16 to 20 million people. Dang, that's a lot.
Million?
In 1340.
Oh, like just the overall population?
Yeah. I did not think it was that many. That's so many people.
But also, like, not that much, you know?
Right.
Like, when you think about, like, today's population.
Right. That's true.
I mean, 18,000 people dying in one battle that lasted a few hours, that's insane. That's horrific.
That's awful.
And this is within the first 3 years of the war starting. We've got 100 more to go. So, Edward, after this success, he now wanted to launch a land-based attack. And he sent his friend Robert d'Artois to capture the village of St. Omer. But before Robert could get there, the town had been heavily reinforced with about 5,000 to 6,000 men. And Robert himself had a force between 10 to 15,000 poorly trained soldiers. There's a lot of back and forth. This is the summary of this.
Okay.
On their way to St. Omer, the English battalion had captured the town of Arques and set up camp there. The next day, Robert had his soldiers form like a wall of men and walked, hoping to draw the French army out of St. Omer. A few knights went to engage, were quickly overrun. They started retreating, and then a Flemish contingent out of Flanders started to follow because they were also in Robert's regiment.
Right.
French knights received backup from some more French forces and defeated the Flemish soldiers, and then they went to Arques to attack the English forces there. More French forces went to confront Robert, who beat them to the punch, started advancing. Then the French retreated to St. Omer, and Robert's men continued to siege upon the village until they basically won the battle. That night, the English soldiers returned to Arques, and this is what got me going. So they were fighting this battle.
Right.
The English returned to Arques, and the French soldiers went to St. Omer. And they were so exhausted, they literally just passed each other.
What?
Without fighting.
Oh my god.
They were so exhausted. They were just like, let live and let live. We're just going to pass each other.
We'll see you in the morning.
Yeah.
What?
I think the only reason I included all of that, because that made me laugh so hard when I read it. I was like, I have to include that.
That's crazy.
Continuing on with the war, Edward started sieging the town of Tournai, but he wasn't getting anywhere, and he wanted to keep fighting, but he had no money. He was flat broke. And so right after that, the Treaty of Esplicon was signed, and Edward left and returned to England. And I think this is a pretty short treaty. I think it was maybe 2 to 10 years, something like that.
Okay.
So meanwhile, like I said, there was the Breton Civil War was going on between 1341 and 1343, and there was more things that happened with this later on as well. Between two guys who wanted power over the duchy throne in Britain, or in Brittany.
Okay.
Edward eventually got involved, and really the only thing that happened was a lot of civilians were killed in this civil war. It got so bad that the Pope was like, enough is enough. And in 1343, attempted to negotiate peace between Edward and Philip, which did not work. They weren't able to get anywhere. Edward came back to France and landed in Caen. There's a subtlety I can't pronounce. Caen, which had been untouched by the war up to this point. And he just fucking slaughtered everyone.
Well, that's rude.
Thousands of innocent civilians were killed. Again, this is war. It's brutal. This war is not. It's really.
And Edward
fucking
did that?
Brutal. Edward did. Yeah.
Why?
Because that's what you do that's apparently to him. That's what you do in war. Is you.
There was a treaty.
I know, he broke the treaty.
Ugh.
So, Philip was starting to work on setting up a counteroffensive, but couldn't get organized in time. And the French army ended up just pursuing Edward northward up to Crécy. Mm-hmm. So this is the Battle of Crécy that occurred in 1346. So Edward's army had 14,000 trained lethal warriors with about 7,000 longbowmen. And Philip's army had 32,000 men with 12,000 crossbowmen. So Philip's army doubled. More than doubled.
Wow.
Edward's army. The French army actually started a nighttime assault, which was not the norm. It kind of went against the rules of engagement at the time.
Wow.
Because usually you fight during the day. But it started raining.
Oh, no.
And then the English archers saw that the French were approaching and just picked them off.
Oh.
One of Edward's sons, he's called the Black Prince, but he's also Edward, so I'm just going to call him Edward Black Prince or Prince Edward.
Okay.
He was in charge of his own regiment and was actually almost killed in the third wave of attacks. And he'd actually called for his father for aid, because usually the king sat in, like, the back to, like, coordinate.
Yeah.
And would, like, lend out forces as needed, but they sat in the very back so they weren't, like, first killed. Because that would not be good for anyone except the enemy.
Yeah.
So he requested his father for aid, but he said, no, you're going to win, but you have to do it on your own merit. And he did. Prince Edward ended up turning it around and won his part of the battle. The French, this battle, made 15 different assault attempts.
Jesus!
And King Philip himself was injured. And the French army finally retreated. The English had fewer than 100 deaths on their side. The French had lost 10,000 men.
Oh, they're just oh my God. They can't win for losing.
They really can't.
Literally.
They encounter loss after loss after loss.
And Edward's broke.
Edward's flat broke, but because he keeps winning these battles, he's like, let's keep going. And it gets to the point where even, like, other English noblemen are like, yeah, like, okay, you're getting somewhere, like, here's some more money.
What?
And really, up until, like, towards the end of the war, the longbowmen were the difference.
Wow.
The English longbows, kind of, spoiler alert for the very end, it wasn't until the French started using, like, artillery with, like, gunpowder that things started to take a turn.
Whoa.
But up until then, it was, like, because usually the English armies had, like, thousands of longbowmen, and they were just mowing down the French like nothing.
Why wouldn't the French try to get their hands on that technology?
They were so married to their crossbows, I guess. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, I would think that, like, hey, we keep getting killed by these longbows. Maybe we should have a longbow ourselves, like, make it a little bit more even.
That's the normal progression of war. One entity gets something, and the other one gets something even better to match it, and then the first one, it builds like that. It's supposed to. You're not supposed to just continue to get slaughtered.
It took them a very long time to learn that, unfortunately.
The pride.
Seriously. So, the same year, we have the Siege of Calais that started in 1346. So, after the Battle of Crécy, Edward starts moving northward and starts sieging on the city of Calais to try to capture it. It was a very advantageous port with very good access on the channel to England. So, it was a very, very good place to have. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of other battles going on around France, and the French just keep losing. God. Including, the French had backed, like, a Scottish attack / invasion, like, from Scotland to England, and it just failed.
What?
And that kept happening, too. Like, again, like, France and Scotland were allies, but they did not have similar fighting styles at all.
Right.
And they did not mesh well fighting together at all. And so anytime they kind of joined up, didn't go well. It's kind of pitiful, honestly.
Yeah.
So the Siege of Calais is still going on. By 1347, English forces have been weakened by desertion and illness. And Philip is finally getting his act together for a counterattack. But when he got there, they were so, like, entrenched in Calais, Philip just gave up and left. And so the English ended up taking control of Calais in August of 1347, which they would maintain until 1558.
That's the whole war.
That's after. That's way after. That's like 100 years after the war ends. And I think it was a completely different war with the Italians that, like, where they lost Calais.
Oh my God.
So, there's that. The English military up to this point wasn't taken super seriously, but with all these wins, people are like, okay, the English military has, like, some gumption to it. Like,
they have bows. They have longbows. That's all they have.
They started having a very good reputation at this point. I think Edward was also a very skilled military leader as well. Because he was in charge of most of these, or, like, men very close to him were in charge of these battles. But all the major battles Edward participated in.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? He's still broke.
He's still broke.
So he goes back to England.
Oh my God.
King Philip, was not having a good time. His nobles were like, you fucking suck.
Yeah.
All of our men are dying. We keep losing our lands to the English. So they're like, let's turn the tables. Let's turn the tides. Let's fund our own invasion for England. So all the nobles and all, like, anyone that had money were pulling together to launch a full-scale invasion to England. But then something happened that no one ever thought of happening. The Black Death.
Oh, no.
Ravaged Europe in 1348.
Not the plague. The damn rats.
Between a third and a half of all people in Europe died.
Well, we said 16 to 20,000 just in France. No, million, sorry. 16 to 20 million just in France. That's just in France. Let's just say 10 million people died.
Mm-hmm.
I'm nauseous thinking about that number because that's the rest of England too.
Yeah.
All of it.
All of Europe. There's actually, I've seen like population graphs, like tracking the exponential growth of humanity, like over the centuries. And the only time there's a dip is during the Black Plague because the population halved.
Wow.
Among those to die was King Philip in 1350.
Oh, shit.
So his son took the throne as Jean II. And I will work to say his name is Jean to differentiate him from all the Johns we'll talk about.
Okay. There's Jean and then there's John. Okay,
Jean II and a lot of Johns. None of them are kings, so they'll be like John of blank and John of blank or John the blank. Because there's a lot. So in 1353, Edward said that he will cease all hostilities with France if he was given back the land Aquitaine, and he also asked for Normandy and Flanders that he'd had before the war. So he wanted what he had and then some. And that was it. He was like, I'll just take these lands and I'll stop the war. He would even give up his claim to the throne. He just wanted the lands.
Wow. Well, he's getting up there in age for 1300s. Yeah.
So Jean at first agreed, and then he said no.
Why?
I don't know. He just said no. So Edward started corresponding with a man named Charles II of Navarre, or Charles the Bad.
Oh, he seems
this motherfucker.
Lovely.
He just keeps coming up like a little mosquito. He's very much someone who like wants so much power, and he will do whatever it takes, and it, spoiler alert, does not work out for him. I don't know what ended up happening to him, but he never really gets what he wants. It's just kind of funny. But he was one of Louis X's grandson. So he was the king or the duchy or whatever of Navarre.
I'm not gonna lie, this painting of him, he looks like a little shithole. Like, why am I annoyed by his presence?
And it's the same in the video I watched. Like, the guy uses like face paintings of like the different characters, and that's the painting that he used. And it's so funny. He looks like such a sniveling little man, and just
like a little brat.
Charles II popped in. I'm like, oh, that guy.
Ugh.
So Edward and Charles II, or Charles the Bad, start corresponding, and Charles claims that he has a better claim to the French throne than Edward himself, because he is directly, which doesn't really make sense because Edward is a direct descendant of one of the kings, but Charles says he has a better one. And Charles ended up killing one of John's top military leaders in a very stupid move.
Oh.
I wrote Philip here. I meant to write Jean. So Jean was pissed off by this.
Yeah.
Of course, because he's like, you just killed one of my guys. But he didn't want to be invaded by England again and Navarre. So he set up a tentative truce in 1355 between France and Navarre.
Okay.
Just to kind of keep Charles off his back.
Okay.
So then Edward finds out that his lands are being chipped away by French forces in Gascony, or Aquitaine, and sent his son Prince Edward to respond.
Okay.
Once again, when England came in, they moved through France, just demolished everything they came across. They sacked over 500 settlements.
Oh my God.
And they just really, their plan worked because it ended up taking away a lot of resources from the French army.
Right.
And by the time they got close enough to engage, the French forces were severely outnumbered and did not engage with the English troops. So Edward's back in France Prince Edward. So Prince Edward moves northward, again, just fucking France up as he moves across. Meanwhile, in 1356, Charles the Bad was trying to be sneaky and start spreading rumors about how he was going to defect to England. Like, they're just rumors. Like, he's trying to start shit.
Oh, he's just stirring the pot.
Oh, I'm thinking about defecting to England. What's gonna happen? I even know I signed this truce with France. And Jean's paranoia ramped up to a million because he's like, fuck, like, I don't need this right now. Like, England is fucking up France, and I have this little sniveling shit that's trying to start shit. So he imprisons Charles and then took all of his territories that he gave Charles in their truce. He's like, you can't have these, you sneaky bastard. I take them back.
You little shithole. Like, why are you like this, dude?
I know, and he doesn't go away.
Can you imagine just being such a menace enough to where you've gone down in the history books as just a menace?
Charles the Bad is how he's known.
Oh my God, that's so awful.
Meanwhile, in 1356, England invades Normandy, which is not good for the French.
Right.
So Jean made the decision to move to intercept Prince Edward in what will be known as the 1356 Battle of Poitiers. The English had 6,000 men. The French had 11,000 men. They actually, before they were like ready to go, and a nobleman comes out to talk to Edward, Prince Edward, and manages to talk him down a little bit. It's like, hey, we don't have to fight. Like, let's see if we can negotiate something. Like, I think in the video he said, think about all the Christian lives will be lost in this battle. And Edward's like, okay, I'm willing to negotiate. Let's figure something out. But Jean demanded unconditional surrender. And Prince Edward said, no.
You're not in the position to demand that.
No.
He's willing to work with you, and like you're...
And I think because the French army outnumbered the English army, which they have every single time, like, I think Jean thought they could win. But it really did not go the way Jean was planning.
Did your daddy not tell you, before he died, they have longbows?
Yeah, did not go well. Jean was captured.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Not Jean.
King Jean was captured after this battle. So, again, the English lost about 100 men in this battle. France lost closer to 2,500 men, with a lot of men retreating, and 3,000 were taken prisoner. Horrific loss.
What do you do with 3,000 prisoners?
I don't know. So, after Jean II was captured, France was thrown into a countrywide civil war.
Yeah.
And there's literally, the video talked about different they had a certain name. They're basically mercenary groups, would just roam France and just fuck everything up. They would destroy villages, take resources, whatever. As if it wasn't bad enough, like, the English were doing this. Now, like, French mercenaries and English mercenaries and Flemish mercenaries were like...
Man, people are just trying to farm. Leave them alone.
Then there is an event called a jacquerie. I hope I said that right.
Jacquerie?
So, taxes ended up going up to pay for all the ransoms England had on all the the French nobles they had captured, including the king. Because that's what they did. They were like, we have your nobles pay us ransom so we keep them alive.
They're getting their money back.
So France had to raise all the taxes to pay for all these ransoms. But who has to pay the taxes? The lower class and the peasant class. Which...
half of them are gone.
Yeah. So the Jacquerie was the peasant class going up and killing every noble they saw.
Oh, shit.
Not good.
Oh, no. Oh, God.
France is not doing well.
No.
So guess who comes back? Mr. Bad himself. Charles the Bad swoops in and...
wasn't he in prison somewhere?
He was. I think they're like, help. So he, quote, brutally quelled the uprising. No more detail about that. I don't know if I want the detail about that. But stopped the Jacquerie and stopped the Civil War, essentially.
Probably just walked around and was like, I'm Charles.
I point my nose at you. My horrible nose at you.
Hello, I am Charles the Bad. Do you want to know why I'm called that?
You don't want to find out. So after, like, France was calmed down, whether through brute force or otherwise,
right.
October 24, 1360, the Treaty of Brittany was signed by Charles Dauphin of France. And Dauphin means, because I had to look it up, because I was like, there's so many Dauphins. I hope I'm saying it right. It means, like, heir apparent. So I take it to mean, like, current heir to the throne. Because there'll be several Dauphins I'll mention.
Dauphin?
Okay. Dauphin. It means dolphin, but it has, like, some kind of significance in France.
Dolphin?
Yeah.
Okay.
I looked it up. I didn't understand where the dolphin came from, but it means heir apparent and dolphin.
I'm sure there's a reason.
I'm sure there is. I was too busy to look up more into Dauphin.
Yeah. Fair.
So, the Treaty of Brittany was that all of the lands Edward wanted would be given to him if he relinquished his claim to the French throne. The French gave him 600,000 pounds to release Jean.
Okay.
And Edward was like, sure, fine. However, one of Jean's sons escaped English imprisonment against the treaty. So then Jean had to return back to England to remain a prisoner to appease the treaty.
Damn it. What even... Could you imagine sailing back over there, knowing you're just going back to prison?
Because your idiot son just escaped somehow?
Couldn't just sit for a little bit longer?
So Jean actually died 4 years later in 1364. And his son, Charles V, became the new king of France.
Okay.
So now we're getting into the Carolingian phase of the 100 Years' War. I think this one is not really the shortest phase. Never mind.
Question.
Yeah.
So we still have Edward III as king. Mm-hmm. We're now on our third French king.
Yes.
So we've gone from Philip to Jean to
now
Charles
the Fifth.
Okay. Man, I bet Edward's feeling good right now. He's like,
still alive, bitches. So back in 1361, Jean had named one of his sons the Duchy of Burgundy, and Duchy is like a duke.
Okay.
But Charles the Bad was like, I'm the Duchy of Burgundy, excuse me.
Ugh.
No reason. So he like wrote a letter to Jean, and Jean ignored his request. So then Charles is like, I'm going to march on Paris, and I'm going to join up with the English. So in 1364, we had the Battle of Cockerell. French forces actually won this battle.
Okay.
They finally won one.
Finally won one.
Which is actually days before Charles V's coronation.
Wow.
And Charles II, Charles the Bad, didn't really have any gravitas for a claim anymore. He's like, okay, you defeated me. So Charles the Bad and Charles V signed a peace treaty in 1365.
Okay.
We'll see how long this one lasts.
Jesus.
And something I found out watching the video is that some of the treaties were only like peace for 2 years, peace for 10 years, peace for... It wasn't like forever. It was just for a couple years. I guess because like it was the only way to appease, like, we're going to stop it for now. And then future people can figure it out 2 years from now. I don't know. Because like the English still wanted stuff. And then the France was like, please stop killing us. And the English were like, but we still really want stuff. It's like, well, how about for 2 years you stop killing us and we'll give you some stuff. And then after 2 years, like, we can figure it out. And then England would be like, okay, we're invading again and killing more of your people. It's kind of how the cycle keeps going.
I hate all of this. This is dumb.
Yeah. So after Jean died, Charles was like, I want to take back all these lands that England had captured.
New king, gotta prove himself.
So that Treaty of Brittany that had been signed a while ago was broken.
Out the window.
And fighting resumed in 1369. But they were able to recapture Normandy, Brittany, and Aquitaine. One of the biggest assets that the French had was one of the major military commanders named Bertrand de Guesclin.
Uh-huh.
He was a brilliant strategist, a brilliant battle master. Like, I think he was involved, like, anytime the French won a battle, he was involved in that battle.
Well, he has been painted with a permanent, like, grump face.
Angry face.
Yeah, he's stern.
Every picture, like, you look up of him, like, every painting, he's very angry looking.
Yeah.
He did not mess around.
He doesn't look like it. I wouldn't cross him.
So, between 1364 and 1365, a guy from England named John took control over Brittany following another civil war that had lasted decades, and he was a turncoat and ended up swearing his homage to Charles V of France.
Okay. So he was from England. He captured...
Took over Brittany.
Okay.
And then was like, I am loyal to the French.
So he gave it right back?
Yeah. Because he wanted the land, and they're like, we'll give you Brittany if you're loyal to us. And he was like, yes.
Oh, okay. I was like, why would they do that? That makes sense. Okay.
So this next part's going to be a little complicated. And I really only mention it because Edward the Black Prince is involved in this, but doesn't really have a whole lot to do with, like, the overall English-French conflict.
Right.
But it's still, like, a part that happened. So Charles V wanted to, because he didn't have enough going on, he wanted to make a move on Castile, or Spain, present-day Spain.
Why?
Do a bunch of whole other things. We're not going to get into it. It's basically, like, I think Charles' like sister or aunt or something like that, like, was married to the king of Castile, and she wasn't treated well and ended up being imprisoned, and like the king married another lady, and it was just a whole mess. I'm not going to get further into it. And there's a whole big conflict in Castile because, like, the king had a bunch of illegitimate sons, and then he died, and so his son became king, but then, like, one of the illegitimate sons was like, but I want to be king, and so there's a whole civil war there. A bunch of stuff. So the legitimate king was Pedro. It was like Pedro of Castile, but he's Pedro.
Okay.
And then the usurper was Henry of Trastamara.
Okay.
So they're half brothers. And Henry is the illegitimate son.
Okay.
And between 1365 and 1366, France came in and they claimed Henry was the king of Castile. Don't ask me any details about that.
Okay.
I don't know how another country can just come in and be like, he's king now. I don't get that. But the current king, Pedro, is ousted. And so Castile and Pedro were allies with Prince Edward in England. So Pedro went to Prince Edward, and Charles the Bad was there because he has to be.
Why is he here?
I think it's because Navarre actually bordered Castile in France.
Oh, he heard the shit that was starting. He's like, I gotta be a part of that.
There's drama. I gotta be there. I'm telling you, he keeps popping up like a bad penny. Like,
Jesus. Stay home, dude.
He's like, well, now you're on my turf. So, like, part of the treaty was that, like, Prince Edward would be able to move through Navarre to get to Castile and the surrounding areas, like Aragon and Portugal and all of that. And in exchange, Pedro would, like, pay back the cost that Prince Edward made to, like, move his army down there, like, plus some other stuff.
Right.
So in 1367, we have the Battle of Nájera. Edward and Pedro's army that had about 10,000 men, and Henry had about 4,500 men. So they had fewer than half. Almost half of Henry's men were killed in this battle.
Wow.
It was really, did not go well for Henry, and minimal losses for Edward's army.
The Black Prince really do be coming in there.
He was also a very effective military leader.
Yeah.
So, in 1369, there's more back and forth between Henry and Pedro. Like, it's so silly. Watch the video for more detail about it. It's like Pedro's literally running all around like Portugal and Castile. Eventually, in 1369, Henry and Pedro meet face to face, and Henry kills Pedro in hand-to-hand combat in like a tent.
What?
And Henry is crowned King of Castile, who maintained his allyship with France and agreed to help with his navy and other forces, which does come back later. That's, again, why I'm talking about this one.
Okay.
But Portugal, Navarre, and Aragon continued their war with Castile. And this went on to, like, 1373, 1375-ish. So they were all still engaged in war with each other. Because Portugal, Navarre, and Aragon did not like Castile. And I think Aragon is now part of Spain. Like, Castile and Aragon are now Spain. Maybe Navarre is too, I'm not 100% sure. So, after the Battle of Nájera, Edward returns to Gascony. Mm-hmm. He was pretty broke, because, again, like, one of the deals is that Pedro was going to, like compensate Edward.
He did, though. He's dead now.
But Pedro at this time was like running all around Castile. Like he couldn't pay back Edward because he was too busy fleeing his half brother and running all around Castile at the time.
Oh my God.
So he couldn't pay back Edward. So in Gascony, they started raising taxes to help get more money, but the people hated that.
Yeah.
So an uprising started because if you raise taxes, no one likes that. So the people of Gascony appealed to Charles V. They're like, help us out, King Charles, because our taxes are too high. And he was like, ha 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 ha. Like, literally, I imagine him rubbing his hands together. Like, finally, I have an excuse to invade.
Nice. Oh, he was ready and waiting.
He was so ready. And King Edward back in England is like, wait, let's keep it cool, you guys. How about we arrange peace? Nope, didn't work.
No, you done pissed him off.
Done pissed him off. So in 1369, Charles V began attacking the English territories in Aquitaine, Gascony, and Flanders. And these were actually more like guerrilla style almost.
Okay.
Like tactics. Like they weren't full, big, drawn out battles. It was more like small bands, like going out attacking and retreating. Charles V told his commanders, do not engage with English forces.
I'm glad someone's finally, it took a couple generations, but
yeah, it took about 50 years, but well, like 30, but they got there.
Damn.
So in 1370, King Edward sent a man named Robert Knowles to go fight in France, which he did. Usual English treatment of devastating the French countryside on his way to Paris.
Of course.
Charles V appointed Bertrand de Guesclin, who, again, he had been in many, many battles at this point.
Yeah, Mr. Stern guy.
Mr. Stern guy. He was actually named a Constable of France.
What? What?
Which that title made me laugh. Like, he's the Constable of France. All of France. So, Knowles had been camped near Paris, but winter was coming and his regiment was like, we need to find somewhere to winter, so they kind of separated. So 2 of the regiments that broke apart from Knowles were under Gradison and Fitzwalter. They were fucking obliterated by Guesclin's forces.
Oh, no.
And so then Knowles, like, got the fuck out of there. He was like, nah, never mind. So he left.
That's like 2/3 of your people gone.
Yeah. So France was like, our first major win! Yay! We did it! You guys, go Guesclin! So another guy named Louis, who was another one of Jean's sons, he was Charles V's brother, started capturing different towns in Aquitaine.
Okay.
And at the time, Prince Edward, he had been injured, and he actually got really sick after the battle in Castile.
Oh.
And one of his son had died. And he was just devastated by the death of his son. So he had actually left Aquitaine to go back to England and left his brother, John of Gaunt, in charge in 1371. Okay. So John of Gaunt will come back, but John of Gaunt's in charge while Louis is attacking Aquitaine.
Okay.
And then Guesclin comes in, and he's like, boom, 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 like a pinball, going around Aquitaine and capturing different towns. So we get to the Battle of La Rochelle in 1372. La Rochelle was in Aquitaine, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
It's a port city. It had been captured by the French, and so King Edward sent a naval force to help them out. But the navy was attacked by Castilian ships who were waiting for them at La Rochelle. So the way you imagine it, like in the port, you have French and Castilian ships, and then coming in from the English Channel are the English ships. So they were having a little battle, but it turned dark. And so the English ships went out to sea to anchor. Mm-hmm. In the night, the Castilian ships attacked.
What?
They sprayed the anchored ships in oil and then lit them on fire with flaming arrows.
Oh, shit!
There were very few survivors of this attack.
I mean, that's effective, but it's fucked.
It's really fucked. And, like, they couldn't escape because they were all anchored.
Yeah. Oh, no.
So I wouldn't even call that a battle. I would call it, like, the massacre of La Rochelle.
That is like, a slaughterhouse.
Yeah. So, fast forward to 1373.
Yeah.
Aquitaine is still being conquered by the French, or they surrendered. So John of Gaunt finally starts responding, and he goes around eastern France and just lays waste. Mm-hmm. So I guess he came in from the north. I think he came in from, like, Flanders, and he goes down and around eastern France until he gets to Gascony, because they were like, we can't go in by boat, because that did not go well last time. So he went by land, but a lot of his men died due to the weather, because it was starting to get really cold. But once the French found out that, like, John of Gaunt was there, they did not directly engage in battle, but they did start attacking his supply lines behind his army and straggling regiments. So completely, like, took out literally only half of his men made it to Gascony.
Wow.
I don't know how there's people left in France and England after this war. I really don't.
So John was the guy that pledged his allegiance to France, right?
No, this is a different John.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay,
there's many Johns.
Okay.
The John that pledged his allegiance to France, I think, was John of Monmouth.
Okay. I was like, but wait, why? That makes sense.
No, John of Gaunt is one of King Edward's sons.
Got it. Okay. I'm back.
And he was placed in charge of Gascony after Prince Edward left because he was sick and his son had died.
Right. Okay.
Sorry. Again,
we're back.
A lot of repeating names.
That's okay. That's okay. I probably clarified a little bit for everyone else too. So we're good.
So between 1374 and 1375, there were peace talks led by the Pope because he was like, this shit has been going on for too long.
Yeah.
Between John of Gaunt and Philip, Duke of Burgundy. And I haven't really talked about Burgundy up to this point. They've been kind of like off to the sidelines. Burgundy's another, like, territory. It's a duchy of France. Like a territory of sorts.
Okay.
Burgundy starts becoming a lot more involved from here on out. But they were, like, setting up, like, an agreement of sorts called the Treaty of Bruges.
Okay.
I forgot to write down that pronunciation. Meanwhile, Guesclin is continuing his campaign of Aquitaine in Gascony. But this treaty ceased all hostilities for 2 years, and the English land holdings were backed down to what they'd been before the war started. So basically, like, just Gascony, Aquitaine.
Yeah.
And they still had Calais, of course. So in 1376, Prince Edward died.
Oh.
And the following year, King Edward died.
Damn.
So Prince Edward's second son, Richard, took the throne as Richard II. I don't know why John of Gaunt didn't, unless he was, like, an illegitimate child. Because, I mean, we talked about it before, but, like, even the king's illegitimate children were still made, like, dukes and earls and still were noblemen.
Unless the king was just a butthole, they were still treated very well.
Yeah. So I wonder if that's why, because Richard was still a child when he was named king.
Oh.
So that's why I'm like, why wasn't John of Gaunt? But I'm thinking John of Gaunt may have been not in the line for the throne.
Okay.
Because I don't think he had died. So there was, like, a ruling council that took over to act as regency until Richard was old enough. And France decided to take advantage of all this. I mean, a prince and a king died, and now a child is king. So they started doing, like, naval raids across the south of England, like, from the west to the east, like, all along the south of England. They did naval raids. They're pretty devastating. And then other French attacks were made on English territories in France. Some were successful, some were not. But then France suffered their own shit, with Guesclin and Charles V dying within months of each other in 1380.
Oh, no!
So there was an interim ruler, and he died very shortly after that.
What?
And Charles VI, who was a child himself, was named king. So now we have 2 boy rulers in England and France.
We've got Richard and Charles. Okay.
Charles VI.
Charles VI, Richard II.
Yes.
Both children.
Both children. They're both boys. I don't know. I think Richard was 9.
What?
When he was named king. And I don't know. I feel like Charles is about the same age. So a bunch of Charles's uncles actually became, like, their own regency council.
Okay.
They named themselves the Princes of Blood.
Don't do that. That's a little on the nose.
A little bit. They, as you can imagine, they weren't great.
No, they sound like they're just out for blood. Like,
they actually, it sounded like they embezzled from the treasury.
Of course they did. They're the Council of Blood.
The Charles V had, like, carefully maintained, like, a stockpile of the treasury, and then the Princes of Blood are like, that's our money. Free. We are the bank.
Oh my God.
More discontent. England went through a coup in 1379 after tax increases and economic decrease. This is known as the Wat-Tyler Rebellion. I'm not going to go into it. The video does. Watch the video. And in Flanders went through its own civil war in discontent in 1379.
Okay.
So it's just fucked everywhere. Nowhere's happy.
Children are in charge. Uprisings everywhere.
I think Charles the Bad in Navarre is still okay. I think he's fine.
Of course he is.
I think he's the only one that's happy in all this.
He's got more pots to stir.
So in 1382, France finally responded to the Flemish Rebellion, which was subsequently crushed. And I do mean crushed very violently. And the following year, they started planning yet another invasion of England through Scotland, because it worked so well the last time. But when Richard's army responded, the French army retreated. They're like, nope.
The French still don't have longbows.
In 1386, the English started raiding against French ports, because Because we're nearing the end of part 1. This is where I'm going to leave you all for today. My mind was boggled, and I was like, excuse me, what the fuck? And I will say, it sounds horrible. I think it is horrible, but it's not as bad as it sounds.
Okay.
And it's going to sound really fucking bad.
Okay.
So just be prepared. You're unprepared.
I am. I'm scared now. Okay.
So in 1388, France is going through a lot. So Charles VI disbanded the Princes of Blood. He was like, get out of here.
Yeah.
And reinstated his father's old advisors, which...
Fair.
Good move.
He's grown up a bit, so he can say that. Yeah.
Yes. And Richard was not having a good time in England.
Okay.
It was just not good. So they were like, hey, okay, we're not doing great. They were both boy kings. They kind of didn't grow up together, but they had grown up as kings. And so they're like, let's sign a peace treaty, a 28-year peace treaty. One of the deals in 1396 was that Richard would marry Charles' 6-year-old daughter.
That's bad.
Uh-huh. I was like, what? He was 29. The reason it's not as bad as it sounds, because I was like, what the fuck? I looked into it. The marriage was never consummated.
Okay.
Thank God. It wouldn't have been anyway until she was of age.
Right.
They weren't that depraved. But from the sources I read through, I looked it up separate from the video, because the video is just like, he married a 6-year-old daughter. And I was like, wait, go back. I need more information. Apparently, because Richard never had any children with his first wife.
Okay.
And she died.
Okay.
And so his relationship with his new wife, who was 6, was more of like a father-daughter relationship or like uncle-niece relationship than a husband-wife relationship. It was really, the marriage was for a peace treaty negotiation.
Okay.
And that was the extent of it. But they never consummated the marriage. He actually died like not very long after this. So, but yeah, it sounds really bad. I think it is really bad. Like, I can't imagine a king being like, marry my 6-year-old child so we can have peace for almost 30 years.
And shipping her off to another country.
To England.
At 6 years old. I mean, that is a year younger than my son. If somebody tried to take him away from me, Moida, like, it wouldn't.
And it was so sad because it talked about, like, how she was so excited to bring her dolls and dresses with her. And I was like, she is a baby.
She's a child.
A wee baby.
How old was she when he died? When Richard died?
I think, like, 10. He died, like, 4 years later.
Oh, God. So she's still a kid.
Yeah. So the age of maturity for women or for girls, was between like 13 and 16.
Yeah.
And so the marriage would not have been consummated until she was at least 13, but it could have been later.
Right.
Because they had no idea what being a teenager was back in the 1300s. They were like, oh, you have a teen in your age, you're an adult now.
Yeah.
You have a menstrual cycle, you are a woman.
Yeah.
But in their marriage, she never reached that age. So
what happened after? Like, did she go home? Did she?
I'll just say this because it's not really relevant to the story of the war. From what I gathered, after Richard died, which we'll talk about a little bit in our next episode, she was kind of kept like a sort of prisoner in England by like Richard's enemies. It was really weird. I didn't really understand. Oh. And then when she was older, she was married off to like a French nobleman. And she actually died in childbirth at around the age of 19 or 20.
Oh, that's just sad.
Yeah, it's really sad.
I hate that women were just pawns.
I know, I do too. And actually, I didn't write her name down, but her name was Isabella Valois. Was her name. And I do have an article about her linked in the show notes because I was like, I need to know more about this.
Yeah, oh my God, I need to feel better about this.
Yeah. So, still not great, but not as bad as it could have been.
Still bad, though.
Still really bad. Still, we're not dismissing how bad it really truly was. With that, I'm ending part 1 there because part 2 we'll jump straight into the Lancastrian phase, which is the 3rd phase of the war.
All right.
So we're stopping there. We have a little bit of peace, ?
Okay.
For, I don't know if it makes it the full 28 years of the treaty. I think it was just shy.
Okay.
So when we'll
think of this week off as your peace times during the treaty.
This is the eye of the storm.
Right. The shit's coming back. The English still have their longbows. The French still do not.
Yep. But the French are about to have their own secret weapon, which I cannot wait to just kind of surprise y'all with next week. I'm so excited because this person I was not prepared for, and I was like, yes! So, but not till next week.
Woo!
So, let's get into socials.
Okay. Come talk to us on our socials, please.
Yes,
because we love you.
Do.
And we love to hear what you think. So find us on Facebook.
Ill-Equipped History Podcast group and page.
Instagram.
At Ill-Equipped History.
Gmail.
Ill-equippedhistory@gmail.com.
TikTok.
At Ill-Equipped History.
And Patreon.
Patreon.com/Ill-Equippedhistory. Please join and subscribe. You get stickers and bonus episodes.
And only for $5. I mean, that's like one coffee at Starbucks.
Yeah.
So you could spend that on us.
And you'll have did we count up how many hours of bonus content we have? I feel like we have to have at least 20.
Yeah. I mean, every month you get typically around close to 2 hours on average. There's 1 month that was kind of shorter. But then...
You got a few that are 2.5, almost 3.
Yeah. Princess Diana was over 3, so...
Yeah, that was... I think that one in and of itself is worth... If I do say so myself as someone who benefits from this Patreon, I think that one in and of itself is worth the $5 a month because, oh my gosh.
Oh, so much happened. And if y'all don't know, in the free bin at McKay's Books, I found the account of the bodyguard that lived through the wreck, and I took it home and was shooketh. And you'll hear all about it.
Yeah. If you
Poor
sign
Trevor.
up.
Yeah. Okay. If you're feeling petty,
go ahead.
Don't start wars.
And if you do start a war, don't go against the English who have longbows and you only have crossbows. It will not end well for you.
And if you're feeling a little mischievous, really think about how you're going to go down in the history books, because you might end up with a name like Charles the Bad. You don't want that.
You could be the Black Prince.
Yeah, seriously,
or you could be Charles the Bad.
Badass. He really did.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I was looking at his picture and I'm like, yeah, he seems like a main male character in a book I've read before. So
he really does. He's given off those romantic vibes. He's definitely one of the most well-painted individuals of the portraits I could find from the 1400s.
I bet women were swooning for that guy. I mean, the Black Prince, that sounds hot. And I kept thinking that Bertrand, is it Bertrand?
I think
grumpy guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Charles's picture, the vibe of it almost feels like he's trying to go for that facial expression and just failing.
Uh-huh.
He's trying to look stern and he just looks like a petulant child.
Which Charles? Charles of Navarre or Charles
Navarre, the bad. Yes.
Yeah. I like how he has a finger pointing. I would love to know what he's pointing at.
I don't know, but someone behind him's pointing too.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like his parents are standing behind him. Yeah.
I know. Someone's like resting her hand on his back.
I'm just imagining.
Maybe this was him as a child. Like,
maybe
he looks very short.
He does look short. Maybe he's like, my mama said.
I'm the Duchy of Burgundy.
It's mine. I'm going to go be friends with England now.
I'm going to go be friends with England. Like, spreading his own rumors just to make the king paranoid is
Why are you putting me in jail? Like, that's so petty.
Oh, man. Well, we will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in for our 100th episode. Hope you liked it. Woo!
Oh, my God. This was so good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.